It's another beautiful day in the shop. It's cold and gross outside, and it's not nearly as cold and not at all gross in my shop. Now, as you can see from the title of the video, we're working on something that is not new to the channel, but is new to the channel. What I mean by that is I talked about this airplane a while ago, and I really haven't done much with it. Now, what I want to do in this video today is a couple of things. I want to bring you up to speed on what has been done, what the goals are for the project, and maybe do a little bit work too. So we're going to start with the wings. And the wings, I mean, they're wings. It's an ARF set of wings. But one of the things that I have done with this model is I've converted it from glow to electric. In order to do that, I had to, first and foremost, select a power system. I had to select a power system that would sort of fit with this. What I usually do is I try to target power, so watts per pound. Roughly estimating the all-up weight is pretty easy when you have an assembled model like this. So I selected motors and then trying to factor in the diameter of prop that I could use. That factors in ground clearance as well as side-to-side clearance because it's a twin. So Master Airscrew was nice enough to send out these props. Now, this isn't a scale configuration. I have a tractor prop, tractor prop, and then a pusher prop. And they rotate, they're counter rotating, not contra rotating. Contra rotating is what I've done on the Bugatti and the Smoothie. So counter rotating propellers, and they rotate inward, and that's to cancel out any P factor. I didn't want to have to deal with that on this model. And so that worked out just swimmingly. Now you'll notice these cowls. These cowls are gray, and the reason that they're gray is because they've got primer on them. The reason they've got primer on them is because this is what I was originally working with. Yeah. Sometimes things can't be fixed. So with this, I tried to look around to see if I could find any replacement parts, because these are fiberglass. Can't find them. Kit's out of production. Nobody's got a stash anywhere. So I did the next best thing I could, was 3D printer. So with the 3D printer, I was able to print off a bunch of prototypes to try to figure out the sizing. This is the 3D Lab Prints B-25 cowl and dummy radial. They're both from them. You can buy just those files, which is cool. And I was able to scale it up. I'll put the numbers on the screen. I've posted this on RC groups as well. But I was able to find a note where I have the actual scaling sizes that I used for these to adapt it to the Hangar 9 B-25. Hopefully it'll save someone some headache and trouble, but yeah. Then you've got to cut off the mounting tabs, and then I reinforced those cowl flaps with some plywood, some 1/64 inch plywood, because they're really thin and look like they're going to break off. For such a big model, I didn't really trust it, and it's kind of a skill feature anyway. Couldn't hurt. Minimal weight. But from there, pretty straightforward stuff. I'm using more of my 3D printed spinner that is just so dead simple to install. So the back plate is like a washer that you put on. It's just, this is 3D printed with the threads, and there's threads printed inside here, and that just works. It's worked for years on my Corsair, and I resized it for that. So that is available on Thingiverse already. Yeah, so that's how I was able to solve that. I'm using the Spectrum medium-sized motor mounts. Used to be Great Plains. They're for making electric conversions. I love them. They're so versatile. You can set the depth at anything you really want. Lots of adjustability, and it's a pretty minimal footprint. It's very rigid. So yeah, that's what I use for the motor mounts. Okay, so that's basically in a nutshell, but what I also had to do was run power wires. The ESCs are in each of the pontoons. I forget the actual term that they use. I'm not a twin guy. So I ran the ESCs inside, they're inside, and then I ran power wires up through the wing. The reason they're plugged in here is so that I don't lose the wires. This is for transport, just like I do with my airlines. I do a male and a female so that when I go to connect them, it's really intuitive. I don't have to think about it. And then I keep the system closed so that nothing gets in there. It works. So I decided to adapt the same thing with the power system. And then there are power lines in the fuselage. Get to that in a minute. And that works out. Now there was a lot of adjustment that I had to do with the flaps as well. Had some servos I had to replace. Straightforward stuff. But there's some plastics that I want to get rid of here. I want to strip all of this covering off because iron-on covering and I, we just don't get along. We're not good friends. We're friends, but we're not close. So that's got to go. We're gonna strip all this down. We're gonna fiberglass it all, and I'm gonna try to see what I can do about this. Remove some of this ugly hardware. These will probably stay. This is how you connect the nacelle. That's the word. The nacelle to the wing. So those will likely be open, and I'll just paint everything. Just paint it all. Got some repairs to do as well. The landing gear is pneumatic. It's Robart gear. That works fine. Not going to change that. But the holes, I thought about doing doors. No, not going to do that. Not going to do that. That's beyond the scope. I want to try to make this a nice looking flying model without it being too complicated or having to worry about it, because it has flown and it flies well, and I want to keep flying it well and not have to worry about something breaking every time that I fly it, right? So that is the path that we're going to pursue. Let me get the fuselage on the bench and go over it as briefly as I can. The fuselage is in fine shape. It's in flyable shape. It's dirty, but that's because it's just been sitting in the corner for a while. Let's go over what I've done. So the way that the tail comes apart is you remove this little hatch, and then there's a bolt, and you can get access to all the hardware. I did an inspection of there. There are things inside that I'll go over when I get to it, but everything is functional. Everything works. There is an individual rudder servo on the underside here that controls each one of the rudders. Each one of these pieces of plastic is old and kind of brittle. This one is completely fogged out from CA glue, and this I had to remove in order to get into the cockpit area just to do some inspection stuff. There is a volt watch inside there as well from the previous owner for the battery system, so you could keep tabs on it. And then the blister, the gun blister, it's there. What can I say? It's there. Belly, we'll come back to the belly, but you can see the wires, the power wires for the batteries here that go up into the fuselage. And then we get to the nose. Okay, so the nose, we've got this old yellowed, brittle, broken piece of plastic, all right? And this used to be the battery hatch. So the battery hatch was just a thin piece of balsa that was kind of warped and not very strong, and I replaced it with a piece of ply. I cut a hole up here because this was empty. It's right above where the landing gear mounts, and this is where my batteries sit. The reason is because of the center of gravity. The manual for this says that the batteries should be mounted under here. Not a chance. Not a chance, because you'd have to put a lot of mass in the nose in order to get the CG right. So we're making useful ballast up in the nose. I have flown already with a flight pack powering the whole model without any of the BECs, the internal BECs on my ESCs, and just 2 different flight packs. We're on 4S, 4000, and easily flew for 5-6 minutes. Okay, we're good. Now, also what I've done is I've relocated the pneumatics. So this is a pressure gauge. When you pump it up full of pressure, this little pin sticks out and there are little markings to indicate how much pressure is inside the system. And yeah, so I relocated this from the bottom of the fuselage, which was awkward and kind of a pain. Let me open up a box on the floor and show you what's inside that. So in this box is a shipment from Park Flyer Plastics. Very fortunate to have Keith Sparks in this hobby. He's amazing, by the way, in case you didn't know. But he does all sorts of awesome vacuum form parts, including a new greenhouse, including a new turret, including a new tail. I mean, it's amazing. Like these plastics are so good, and it even includes the side gunner position bubbles too. The only thing that it doesn't have is any of the gun blisters, which I'm kind of okay with. But those can be reused pretty easily, and then all I have to do is worry about some like styrene tubing for guns. Not a huge deal. So I get to replace all of those plastics with good quality ones, and everything will it'll turn out great. We're gonna have a fresh canopy. Look at that. That's gonna be, oh. Yes, please. Yes, please. All right, so that is what that box is for. And that is after we, again, strip everything down. Everything down. And that's what I'm going to start with next. Let's flip this over and I'll show you what I mean. On the belly side, we have a gun barrel that's kind of just, you know, free spirit, that kind of deal. This is an access hatch. I'll pull this off and then fiberglass it. Some trim pieces. Again, not going to do gear doors because too complicated, too much to break. Gonna leave it be. Keep it simple. This is the belly. Let's pull this off. This has been stripped and I just hit it with a heat gun and the covering film just comes right off. Had no issues. Did a little bit of sanding and a bit of repair. That was my bad. I put my finger a little bit too heavy-handed on the balsa and it cracked. I reinforced it with some CA and it was a little bit warped after that, so put some spackle on it, nice long sanding bar, and I've glassed over top of this with sanding sealer. Now I'm going to use my sanding sealer and water micro balloons, that's the term, micro balloons to fill this weave, and then we'll paint it all up, do a nice livery, and call it a day. I've been yammering on, getting you guys caught up. I'm trying to do it as quick as I can, so I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to put you on a time lapse, and I'm going to start taking some stuff apart and prepping it to just remove the covering film. There's going to be some bits and pieces. I'll have to find a box to put parts into. I do like to save servo boxes for like screws and stuff because you can easily like label the box. I actually have one over there. That way, like you can just put all your screws in there and then you come back to it. Oh yeah, a little bit screw here and there, and it's right where you left it. Shut up, Joshua. Just shut up. What did I just do? Well, I made it into a ARF again. Yeah, that's what I did. I took apart the things that I needed, saved one of the stars and bars as a reference side for ordering new graphics for this. I am going to do some custom nose art, more on that to come. Thank you, Adam Drain. And I saved the things that I needed to save. So the tail bump skid thing, needed to save that. The gun blisters that are for the front and sides, saved one of these just to have as a reference because it was loose already, so for length. And then these pieces for the nose, save those. So we'll uncover these. I'll uncover this as well. Eventually I'll, clean up some of this stuff where this was just snipped off. I'll round that out with my sanding drum just because I'm me. But otherwise, you know, why did I do this? Well, okay, so first of all, you can see that the epoxy, while it was applied on the wood as it was inserted, it was also applied on the covering film. And the covering film was loose, and so these things were wobbly. So I'm going to fix that. I am going to remove all that covering film, and I am going to apply fiberglass. I will probably go ahead and cut these hinges, depending on how difficult the covering is to remove on these, and do some regular Dubro pin hinges, just because I have a feeling that these will come off pretty in a very difficult way. But then I've got to glass this, right? I'm probably going to go ahead and recover the rudders and the elevator, just because there's you can feel that, well, you know, we'll just make life easy real quick. Scissors. Yeah. There's nothing in there. It's a big old hole. So yeah, we're probably going to recover that with something that looks a bit more scale, just to, you know, give it a little something, okay? Because it's little details that add up over time. And if we have covering that already looks like a fabric covering, so be it. Okay, so let me remove some more hardware, and yeah, you're just going back on the time lapse. Okay, so a lot of, you know, harsh heat to your fingers and some glue as well, and you've got something that's mostly uncovered. Now, like I said, I am gonna probably just cut this away because of all this stuff on the inside. It's really difficult to get out. I'm gonna glass it, or at least the stab, and then recover the vertical. So get that stuff later. Try not to tear things up too much, and it'll be fine. Same with the elevator. It's going to be a little bit more tricky because there is a U-joiner that goes through this bottom piece here. I may have to slice off. You can see this is a block of wood here. May have to slice that off to get this out. Pretty easy to reassemble. This isn't really hard stuff. It's just, you know, kind of meticulous. It's a little bit dirty, but, you know, you get into a vibe, you get into a groove, you see a little bit come off, and you're like, oh, I'm making progress. So it's a positive reinforcement kind of deal. So I'm just going to keep going with this. I'm going to strip down the fuselage. I'm going to strip down the wings. And the wings are going to be a lot more difficult because I have to take the nacelles off too. And so just one thing at a time. Now, you know, honestly, what you can do is break this up into sections, which may end up being what I do anyway, because I'm working on several different projects all at once. So I may just stick to stripping down the tail, working on the tail, getting it glassed and ready for paint, then move on to the fuselage, then do the same thing with the fuselage, and then move on with the wings. It depends on how you feel, okay? So there's no real right or wrong way to go about it. It's just, it takes time. And this isn't terribly difficult stuff. You just have to have the time to do it. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm glad that a lot of people have shown some interest in this on social media. I'm happy to share it with you guys. It's going to be a fun project, and she really does fly great, and I look forward to having her fly again as another one of my awesome flying works of art.